Betrayed and broken, how I turned the tables on my wife and her scheme. It started small, so small, in fact, that I almost didn't notice. Emily, my wife of 12 years, suddenly began locking her phone. Now, we'd always had an open phone policy. No big deal. We'd both been used to leaving our phones around without worry. But when she began to keep it locked, I thought maybe it was just a habit. Maybe she wanted more privacy. It didn't seem worth questioning. But then little things began to happen. Every Wednesday, she started having these long coffee dates with her brother, Jake. Now, Jake had always been a character I wasn't particularly fond of. He'd never held down a steady job, constantly jumping from one half-baked business venture to the next, and to be honest, he'd been more of a financial drain than any kind of support. I'd always assumed he was more of a nuisance than a threat, but Emily had always defended him. Still, it wasn't until he started showing up at our house more often that I began to feel that odd prickle in the back of my neck. She'd come home after one of their coffee dates, and I'd overhear bits of their conversations. At first, it seemed innocent, just catching up, the usual family stuff. But then, one day, I overheard him offering her advice on our finances. "You could be doing a lot better with your investments," he was saying. "You're just letting him control everything. It's time to take charge." That was the first real moment something didn't sit right with me. Jake, of all people, giving Emily advice about our finances? I couldn't help but feel like something was off. But I still tried to shake it off, not wanting to jump to conclusions. After all, maybe I was just overthinking it. The morning started like any other. I was running late for work, grabbing a quick lunch when I tried to pay with my card. The cashier gave me a strange look. "Sir, your card has been declined," she said, almost apologetically. I was puzzled. I just deposited a big payment from a client that morning. I checked my phone and my stomach dropped. The balance in our checking account was zero. Not just that, our joint savings were emptied and the kids' college fund was gone. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My hands started to shake as I quickly tried to reach Emily. Call after call, no answer. Texts? Nothing. Panic started to creep in, but I held myself together. I had to see her face to face. Something wasn't right. I sped home, my mind racing. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw it. Jake's BMW was parked in front of the house. My heart pounded harder. I got out of the car, but before I could even reach the door, I saw Emily and Jake hurriedly shoving our kids' things into bags and boxes. The front door was wide open. The house that had been my home for years suddenly felt like a place I didn't recognize. Emily saw me first. Her eyes were cold, calculating. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," she sneered, her voice sharp as if she were speaking to a stranger. I took a deep breath. What the hell is going on? Jake stepped in, his face twisted with a smug grin. "You really don't get it, do you? She's done with you." Emily didn't even glance at me. "I'm done," she said, her tone final, like she had already made peace with her decision. "No more living paycheck to paycheck. No more being controlled by you. I'm taking everything, the kids, the money, and the house." Her words hit harder than I expected. But I stayed calm. "You're taking everything?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Before she could respond, Jake laughed and strutted toward my truck, baseball bat in hand. He swung it with all his might, smashing the headlights, denting the hood. I stood there, frozen for a second, but then I did something I hadn't planned on. I pulled out my phone. "Keep going, Jake," I said, my voice calm, almost amused. "That's about $3,000 in damage you're doing right now." He froze. The bat slipped from his hands like it was suddenly too hot to hold. He looked at me, eyes wide, like he'd been caught in the act. Emily started screaming, furious. "You're threatening us?" she shouted. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just walked past them and into the house. I didn't want to lose my cool, not now. I needed to think. I grabbed every important document I could find, birth certificates, tax returns, receipts. I stuffed them into a bag. "You're pathetic," Emily spat as I walked out the door. "Have fun sleeping in your truck." I turned back one last time. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice low but steady. "For someone so smart, you really don't pay attention to the important stuff. But you'll figure it out soon enough." With that, I walked out, leaving the house and my entire life behind. I checked into a budget motel later that evening, the fluorescent lights flickering above me as I sat on the edge of the bed. It wasn't luxurious, but it was quiet, and for the first time in days, I could think clearly. The world outside felt like it was moving at 100 miles an hour, but I had to slow down. No more impulsive decisions, no more chaos. Now it was time to make sure Emily and Jake didn't get away with this. I had been in shock, no doubt about that. But as the hours passed, the reality of the situation began to settle in. They thought they had won. They thought they had broken me. But they were wrong. I wasn't going to just roll over and let them destroy everything I'd worked for. I wasn't going to let them think I'd be left with nothing. I didn't waste any time. First things first, I called the bank. I had them freeze our joint accounts and transfer whatever I could into a secure account of my own. My heart raced as I listened to the voice on the other end confirming that the transactions were halted, but I kept my voice steady. Next, I contacted my lawyer, Sarah, the one I had always trusted for business matters. She wasn't cheap, but she was good. I needed her on my side now more than ever. I need to protect what's mine, Sarah. I need a strategy, I said, my voice low but urgent. I could almost hear her nodding through the phone. I'll take care of it. Gather all your documents, tax returns, business records, anything that proves you've been in control. We'll need it all. I hung up and immediately started collecting everything I could find, every receipt, every contract, every email that showed I'd been the one holding things together. It wasn't just about money, it was about my reputation, my future, and the future of our kids. For years, I had worked long hours, building relationships with clients, establishing a reputation in the business world. I'd sacrificed weekends, holidays, and late nights to ensure that we had security. I had built something that I couldn't let Emily and Jake destroy without a fight. As I sat there, sorting through papers, I realized just how much they had underestimated me. They thought they could take everything without consequence, but I had always known how to play the long game. The calm before the storm, it was the perfect time to prepare. It was tempting in those quiet moments to rush in and confront them, to make a scene, to lash out. But I knew better. I wasn't like them. I wasn't going to let my anger cloud my judgment. I needed patience. I needed to be deliberate. I couldn't afford to make any missteps now. The hours slipped by as I organized everything: birth certificates, insurance documents, tax records. Each page I touched felt like another piece of armor. The pieces of my life were slowly coming together again, and I was ready. Ready for what was coming next. Emily and Jake had no idea what was about to hit them. They thought they had cornered me, that I was weak and out of options. But the truth was, they had underestimated my ability to wait, to plan, and to act when the time was right. And when that time came, I would be ready. This was no longer about a divorce. It was about everything I had built, everything I had worked for. It was time to take control. And this time, I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. It didn't take long for the pieces to start falling into place. I reached out to a few old friends, people I'd helped along the way, clients I'd worked with for years, colleagues who knew the truth. They were all more than willing to help me now, offering support in ways I hadn't even expected. But it wasn't just my professional relationships that helped. A few days after I'd made the decision to fight back, Sarah, one of Emily's closest friends, reached out to me. Her message was simple: we need to talk. I can't stay silent anymore. I didn't know what to expect. Part of me was still hesitant to trust her. After all, she had been part of Emily's inner circle. But when we met at a quiet cafe that afternoon, I saw the truth in her eyes. I've been covering for her, Sarah admitted, stirring her coffee nervously. I didn't want to get involved, but I can't watch this go on. Emily's been lying to everyone. She's painted you as the villain, but the truth is, she's been hiding a lot. Sarah pulled out her phone and showed me a series of receipts. Ones that weren't for groceries or household expenses, but for designer handbags, clothes, and accessories. Hundreds of dollars in charges to credit cards I didn't know existed. She's been using credit cards under fake names, and she's been racking up debt on them for months, Sarah explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. I knew about some of it, but I didn't know how deep it went until I saw these. She's been living a lie. But that wasn't all. Sarah's voice shook slightly as she continued. Emily's also been meeting with your competitors. I didn't know the full extent until recently, but she's been feeding them information about your clients, trying to sabotage your business. It's not just a personal betrayal. It's professional too. I felt my blood run cold. I'd suspected she'd been working against me in some way, but hearing the truth from Sarah's lips hit harder than I expected. Emily wasn't just trying to take everything I had at home. She was actively trying to destroy everything I'd built for years. The business I'd worked so hard to establish, the relationships I'd nurtured, all at risk because of her and her greed. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even just about the kids. This was war. Sarah handed me the phone, and I scrolled through the messages Emily had sent to my competitors. Detailed reports about the jobs I was working on, complaints about my pricing, even mentions of clients I was trying to secure. She was feeding them everything, trying to undermine my reputation in the industry. "This isn't just a marriage falling apart," I said quietly, more to myself than to Sarah. "She's been destroying everything." Sarah nodded. "I know. That's why I had to come forward. I couldn't let her get away with this." The weight of what I had to do next settled heavily on my shoulders. I wasn't going to just sit back and let her win. It wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about protecting everything I had worked for, everything that was mine. Over the next few days, I gathered every bit of evidence Sarah had provided, combined it with the records I had, and began preparing for what was coming. The walls that Emily had so carefully built around herself started to crumble. I reached out to my lawyer, Sarah's testimony in hand, and we began crafting a case that would not only protect me but expose Emily for everything she had done. Her lies were unraveling piece by piece, and it was starting to feel like I might actually have a chance at turning the tables. I wasn't the villain in this story. I wasn't the failure she'd painted me to be. The truth was coming out, and I was ready to show the world who Emily really was. The calm before the storm had passed. Now it was time to fight back, and I wasn't going to lose. The courtroom was silent as Emily's lawyer started speaking. His voice was smooth, confident, painting me as a neglectful father who cared more about his career than his children. His words stung, but I didn't flinch. I had prepared for this. I knew this was how she'd try to twist the story. She had to make me look bad to justify everything she had done. He made his case about how I was always too busy to be a present father, how my long hours at work meant I neglected my kids. But what they didn't know, was that I had been collecting every bit of evidence. I watched the judge closely, looking for any sign that he was buying into the narrative. Emily sat there, her arms crossed, trying to look composed, but I could see the cracks. Her face was flushed, her eyes darting nervously, like she was already starting to doubt whether her plan would work. Then, one by one, I started laying out the facts. I pulled up her credit card statements, the ones Sarah had helped me uncover. The charges were glaring. Expensive handbags, jewelry, dining out, all while claiming that we were barely scraping by. It was impossible to ignore. Next, I showed social media posts she had made, boasting about her lavish lifestyle, trips with friends, and nights out. Posts that contradicted the image she had painted in court of being the struggling, overworked mother. The final blow came when I called in the teachers. They were the ones who had seen it all. The absences, the missed parent-teacher meetings, the days Emily was supposed to be picking up the kids but was instead nowhere to be found. The teachers' testimonies were crystal clear. Emily hadn't been the mother she claimed to be. I could see the judge's expression change. What had started as a one-sided attack on my character was quickly turning into a deeper investigation into Emily's actions. Her lawyer stammered, trying to regain control, but the damage had already been done. Then came the moment that I had been waiting for. The door opened and Sarah walked into the courtroom. I could see Emily's face go pale as she realized who it was. Sarah had been the key to everything. "I have to speak," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm as she stepped to the witness stand. The room went quiet as she gave her testimony, explaining how Emily had lied to all of us, how she had been hiding debts, manipulating people, and even sabotaging my business. The room shifted. I could see Emily's facade crack in real time. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension as Sarah recounted everything she had seen, every text, every conversation, and every lie Emily had told. I kept my focus, calm and collected, as I saw Emily's confidence evaporate. She started muttering under her breath, looking at the floor, her hands clenched in frustration. When it was all said and done, the judge didn't waste any time. "I'm awarding primary custody of the children to Mr. Thompson," he said. "Ms. Thompson will have supervised visits due to concerns regarding her actions and stability." The words hit me like a wave, but I stayed composed. I wasn't angry, I wasn't elated. It was just relief. It wasn't over, but it was a massive win. The room was buzzing as the decision was made public. Emily's lawyer tried to argue, but it was pointless. The evidence was clear. Emily was defeated and the judge's decision was final. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, but today I had won. And in that moment, I knew no matter what happened next, I was going to be okay. When I stepped outside, I saw Emma and Lucas waiting for me. Emma smiled, her eyes bright with hope. "You did it, Dad," she said softly, hugging me tightly. "I did," I whispered, holding her close. "And I'm not going anywhere." It was a public victory, and the best part was, it wasn't just about me. It was about them, the kids who had been dragged into this mess through no fault of their own. They were the ones who needed stability. And now I could give them that. It wasn't over, but it was a turning point. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As the days passed, Emily's world continued to unravel in a way that felt almost surreal. Her attempts to regain control over the situation were as futile as they were desperate. The first real sign of her decline came when she showed up at Emma's school concert. It was supposed to be a celebration, a proud moment for our daughter, but Emily's appearance shattered that. She was drunk. Her words slurred as she screamed at the top of her lungs about how I had stolen the kids from her. She ranted, causing a scene in front of everyone, her face red with anger. It was hard to watch, seeing her fall apart so publicly, but I stood still in the back of the auditorium, watching, knowing it was a reflection of everything she had tried to hide. What she didn't know, though, was that I had been prepared for this. I had the security footage from the concert. The video would show everything, the drunken outburst, the way she tried to disrupt the event, and how she made it all about her instead of being there for our daughter. When I showed it to the lawyer, it wasn't just embarrassing, it was the final nail in the coffin. Meanwhile, Jake, still reeling from the collapse of his business ventures, wasn't doing any better. His latest stunt, trying to assault a local diner owner who had called him out for bad-mouthing me, landed him in handcuffs. It was all over the news, and once again, Emily's circle was exposed for the chaos it really was. Jake's actions, the same arrogant swagger he had always carried, had finally caught up with him. The diner owner pressed charges, and this time, there was no getting out of it. The humiliation was total. But the biggest blow came when the full extent of Emily's financial fraud was uncovered. The hidden credit card accounts, the maxed-out limits, the falsified information, everything came to light. The court saw it all, and the ruling was swift. Not only was she forced to pay back the money she had stolen, but she was also left with a mountain of debt that would take years to recover from. It was a moment of pure satisfaction, but not because of the victory. No, it was because I knew the truth had finally won out. The lies, the manipulation, the destruction of everything I had worked for, it had all come crumbling down. And in the end, I was the one who stood tall. I had primary custody of our children, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control of my own life again. My business, which Emily had tried so hard to sabotage, was thriving. Clients who had once been on the fence were now coming to me in droves, knowing they could count on me to deliver. Every project I touched seemed to turn to gold. My life was on the upswing, while Emily and Jake's world continued to fall apart piece by piece. But the real reward, the real satisfaction, came when I saw Emma and Lucas thriving. They were happy. They were safe. And most importantly, they knew they were loved. When Emma asked me, "Dad, will it always be this good?" I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going anywhere. I was watching Emily and Jake face the consequences of their actions, and part of me wanted to say, "I told you so." But I didn't. I didn't need to. They knew it. I knew it. The world had a way of righting itself, and in the end, it was their own choices that had led them here. As I watched my kids play outside, their laughter filling the air, I realized something profound. This was what mattered. This was what I had been fighting for all along. Not the money. Not the property. But their future. The love, the stability, and the peace I could now offer them. That was my true victory. And as I looked out the window, a part of me couldn't help but smile. Karma had caught up with them in the most satisfying way, and all I had to do was stay steady, stay true, and let time take its course. For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I had lost so much, but in the end, I had found something better. Something that Emily and Jake could never take away.